This is a 7Artisans 35mm f1.2 lens for the EOS M mount system. And in my opinion, this is one of the best lenses that you can buy for it if you are planning to upgrade from the kit lens, which is the 18 to 55 STM. Let's talk about it. So the 7Artisans 35mm f1.2 is a fully manual lens, which means there are no electrical contacts between the lens and the camera, which means this is a fully manual lens in a sense that there is no autofocus and there is no auto aperture on this thing, which means you have to tweak the focus by yourself and manually adjust your aperture as well, which is the reason why this lens can be sold at a very low price point and it can be of this small form factor. So the first reason why you should get the 7Artisans 35mm f1.2 is that this lens right here, because of the crop factor of the EOS M, is equivalent to 56mm, which is one of the most flexible or versatile focal lengths you can get for any camera system out there. So just in case you don't know, the EOS M, along with all of the Canon APS-C camera bodies, has a crop factor of 1.6. So if you multiply that with the 35mm focal length, you get about 56mm. So like what I mentioned before, 50mm is a very versatile focal length. You can use it for portraiture, you can use it for landscapes, weddings, product shots, and so on and so forth. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite focal lengths is the 50mm because sometimes 35mm is just a little bit too wide for me and 85mm is a little bit too tight. So the happy medium for me is a 50mm focal length. That's why a lot of people are calling it the nifty 50, not just because of the nifty price tag, but the focal length is really a nifty focal length. You can do so much with it. So the second reason why you're going to love this lens is that this opens up to a beautiful f1.2 aperture. So just in case you don't know, the aperture means how big a lens can open, which means it's going to allow more light to get sucked in to the camera's sensor, whereas having a smaller aperture is not going to be as good in low light. So one more good thing that comes with having a big aperture such as an f1.2 is that you are going to have the ability to isolate the subject from the background. You're going to be able to blur the background. In the photography world, we call this bokeh or bokeh, depending on how you want to say it. But in layman's term, it's just the ability to blur the background. So let's pretend you are in a very busy area and you want to take a photo of somebody, but you don't want the area to be in focus or the environment to be in focus. This is a good lens to do that. It's just going to kick away the background and render everything out of focus, whereas your subject will be crystal clear in focus and everything is just going to be focused on that person. So having a big aperture not only allows you to isolate the subject from the background, but it also allows you to shoot better in low light. So we all know that Canon cameras suck in low light, right? Because it gets noisy pretty much as soon as you reach 1600 ISO. But because of having an f1.2, it will allow you to open up the aperture so big that it will suck in more light. So if you're shooting at nighttime, this is a very good lens to have because now you're not just limited to shooting in daytime. You can just put this lens on f1.2 and you're going to be able to film or shoot in low light. Whereas if you were using the kit lens, which only has, I think, an f3.5 to 5.6, which means this is not going to be enough in low light unless you use a flash. You're definitely going to get far better images shooting in low light with an f1.2 lens like this one opposed to using the kit lens. So the third reason why you'd want to pick up this lens right here is that the form factor is super small. Like if you look at it, it's really small. It's almost the same thickness as the camera body. Whereas if you had the kit lens right here, you can see that it sticks out more, right? So I weighed this a while ago. So the total weight of the system right now, the lens plus the camera body plus a battery, will be around 511 grams, which is insane considering how big the aperture on this thing is. So I really love this lens because it does not need an adapter to mount onto the body, because this is a native EOS M or EFM mount lens, which keeps everything just small. You're going to find yourself bringing this camera out more because of just how small the whole system is. So the fourth reason why I love the 7Artisans 35mm f1.2 is that it has a decent minimum focus distance. So it can focus up to a distance of 0.28 meters, which means if I put the subject over here, so this is about how close you can get to the subject. It's not going to give you super macro shots, but it is usable. So let me snap a quick photo so you can see how close you can go to the subject. So the fifth and last thing that I love about this lens is just the price. This is a super budget lens. This only costs about 140 US dollars on Amazon, whereas I got mine used for 50 US dollars because my copy of this lens is broken. So my aperture ring is basically already broken. Not really broken, but there's no more dampening and there's no more clicking. Whereas if you were to buy this brand new, I'm sure you're gonna have a much better experience with the aperture ring than mine because now it's just rotating freely like this. So I've only thought about 3 cons that I've found with the 7Artisans 35mm f1.2. And the first one is the obvious, which is this is a fully manual lens. So if you are still a beginner, you might have a problem using this lens because there is no autofocus. The aperture you have to set by yourself. But then again, if you came from using film cameras, this is going to be easy for you, right? Because you already know how lenses work. But for the beginner, I can already see that you might have a little bit of difficulty using this lens. But then again, if you are going to be able to get your hands on one of these lenses, you are going to learn a new aspect of photography. You're going to learn about focusing manually. You're going to know which aperture you're going to use for a specific scene. So I think this lens really will take your photography to the next level because it will teach you so many things. You're not just going to rely on autofocus all the time, right? So the second con that I have for this lens is not really the lens's fault, but it's just the reason why I got it cheap, because I only got it for 50 US dollars, right? Because the previous owner of this lens probably broke the aperture ring and had to sell it all of a sudden because maybe he doesn't know that it still works because the aperture ring just lost its dampening, but it still works. So my con is that it's too sensitive. I can just freely rotate it like this, but again, it's not the lens's fault. It's just what you get for paying less. So the third and last con that I have is, again, the nitpicky side of me. It doesn't match the blue body of my EOS M. If you had the black colored EOS M, this would match like beautifully. But for me, since I have the blue EOS M, it really doesn't match with this blue or this black lens. So this EOS M is the only EF-M mount camera left in my collection. I used to have the M50. I think I had 2 of those. But yeah, I upgraded to a different camera system now, as you already know. I use Sony mainly, and I've recently got into film cameras. I'm gonna make a video about that in the future. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this quick video about the 7Artisans 35mm f1.2. I love this lens so much because I appreciate the size of it. It just makes it easier for me to bring out whenever I do want to shoot with it. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, leave a like, comment down below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.